Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, My Hero Academia edition. It's been a little bit, but we are back talking some My Hero Academia. Season 6 has been well underway. And for those who have listened to us when we were doing season 5, we would come back after every 4 episodes, give quick recaps, our thoughts on them, and then what we would predict what would happen in the next couple of episodes. So we're going to be talking about season 6, episode 1, 2, 3, and 4 that just concluded this past Saturday. So we have the My Hero Academia enthusiast with us, Miss Andrea Albanese. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, Martin?
I am doing well. I am doing well. Are you ready to actually talk some My Hero Academia season
Some new My
6?
Hero content for
Yeah.
freaking sure. Oh my goodness.
So everyone who's listened to the My Hero stuff, the people who have listened to our anime previews, you guys know that My Hero Academia, well, them and Spy Family were the two official animes that kicked off the biggest anime seasons of all time on October 1st, where the first episode of Quiet Beginning, transcription, A Quiet Beginning came out. So we're going to talk about some of the stuff in the episode, some plot points, some key stuff. There are going to be spoilers. We're not going to go over every episode in complete detail. So definitely check it out for some of the stuff that we don't talk about. So we encourage you to go watch it. So
And
yeah, but
even
we
for the stuff we do include, even if we hit most everything, it's visually still stunning and so impactful. Like, definitely go watch the episodes.
all right. So let's talk about the first one, A Quiet Beginning. So Andrea, first episode, what were you thinking? What happened? Just go from there. We'll go from there.
First episode, I know you had already told me that like they were getting right into it. They weren't really doing a recap. They did like a baby recap, but it was the same length as a normal like recap of the previous episode instead of making the whole episode a recap, which was, oh my gosh, so great. Because we all have been anxiously awaiting what happens in this war. Like we've been waiting for it. In the first episode, the war starts. Like it kicks off with a bang. Just a side note about I really enjoy the new opening. I didn't expect the tone of the opening to be sounding so kind of like upbeat, but I really appreciate the callbacks to the old school like American comic books with the like boom pow like different little, and the design style of it or the art style of it is very reminiscent to like original superhero comic books. So I thought that was cute.
So what were some of you said they were mobilizing. So what were some of the key points of that episode of the first episode? Was it just them mobilizing? What other key points did you have or during that
So
episode?
the other key points of the episode are like with the mobilization, they do kind of break down the structure of the Paranormal Liberation Front and the plan of attack for the hero side. And I didn't memorize kind of the actual structure of or the different teams built within the Paranormal Liberation Army. I did find it hilarious that Dobby and the ice dude that he was fighting almost like were paired in the same group and were the leaders of the same group. I just thought that was ironic. But then for the heroes, it's not a counterattack because technically the heroes make the first move, which is great because, as it's stated, I believe in this episode and maybe even the next episode after, if they waited to be responsive instead of preemptive, the person who's making this prediction straight up says that there's no way they would win. They have to make that first move. So the main part of their preemptive strike is there are two different teams. You have Team Endeavor, and then you have Team Edge Shot. And I kind of forgot about Edge Shot. Like I know he's one of the top. He's number 3, isn't he?
6.
6. Okay, that's yeah. Um, I kind of forgot about him. I know they like, kind of reference him all the time. He was what's his face's favorite hero from the Heroes Rising movie, the one with the quirk that Nine was trying to steal. And getting to see Edge Shot's quirk in episode 2 was really, really, really freaking cool. Like I would not have expected a hero to use their quirk that way, but it makes sense. Anyway, that was a little jumping ahead. But Um, yeah, am I missing anything else? Like, I have particular highlights for this episode that just made me feel like super good. Like,
I was actually two. I actually got them mixed up.
hmm,
Um, if this is the correct one, Shield is six, who's also in this stuff.
hmm.
Headshot is four.
Four. Okay, that makes sense. Because I didn't think he was three, but then I was like, well, maybe he was, leader of the team because Hawks is number two, and Hawks is not part of the front lines in any which way because he's doing reconnaissance.
Number three's
Um,
dead. Well, to our knowledge, he's dead.
that's true. That was something else in the opening. We see a lot of best genius. So
Mhm.
like obviously there's something there with that. Either we're gonna find out more about his death, or maybe he's not dead, or like something's going on with him beyond what we've been able to see. Um, but one of my favorite like highlight moments, actually my favorite one that just made me so fucking happy was before the strike, before the operation started. There were average citizens just walking around being like, hey, like, where are the heroes at? And then they're like, oh, look, there's one. And it was Mr. Two Faced block ass slide and go. And he's like, huh, where are the other heroes at? And then one of the heroes we see at the very, very beginning in season one, because he was involved in the whole like slime villain incident with Bakugo and Midoriya, jumps on him from behind, clamps his fist together, and is like, yeah, you two-faced traitor. Like, of course y'all aren't in on what's going on. Oh, that was such a great moment for me. Made me feel so good.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on the biggest things about this episode. They were mobilizing and they did their plan of
Attack
attack.
and evacuation. That was something else that I really appreciated that I mean, they're heroes, so they try to consider like minimizing casualties, damage, and all that other stuff. But to have, and I just honestly, for the third time, binge watched all four of those episodes right before we hopped on. And it took me a little while to realize that and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but in the main these four episodes, our future big three are really not super prominent. All three of them are helping with evacuation.
Yeah, so obviously for the people listening, Midoriya, Shoto, and Bakugo, as Andrew saying, the new big three are not. They haven't been presence. Their presence haven't been felt yet. Obviously, that'll be later on because this season is 25 episodes.
Right?
So they will be later on. And it's just the way that they built the teams. Those three were actually not in the front lines. Like Andrea said, the teams weren't made based off of who were the strongest. It was based off of need, abilities, and all of that. Because obviously, if they wanted their strongest students just charging in, those three would be right in the front. So,
Right, for
but
sure. And
they will all
that's,
come soon. It will be coming.
yeah. I just
Uh,
appreciate that they kind of are, cooling their heels a little bit. It was again funny. My first reaction when, we see that Bakugo is part of the like evacuation team, of course he automatically starts bitching about it. And all I could think about was his original provisional license exam,
mhm.
the evacuation piece. And while he was slightly better, I mean, he was still Bakugo. So
Well,
that was funny. That was a little humorous moment in there as well.
so you brought up that beginning thing with that guy getting caught. Was that your favorite moment of the episode, or did you have another favorite moment?
So that was probably my best, like, oh yes, thank God moment. Like, yes, but the other highlight for the episode for me might be less significant to the story, but it could be foreshadowing, and I'm like not thrilled if it is. But we had a moment between Mushroom Girl, who we know I'm not like the biggest fan of, but she comes in clutch. Has a moment with Midnight because Mushroom Girl is feeling uneasy because it actually is part of the frontline team. There were two students from class 1B and two students from class 1A in the kind of like spear position of taking over the hideout. And Mushroom Girl was one of them. And so she was worried about like, should we really be here? Like we're just students. Like why like the League are the people that were attacking UA, and Midnight. This is one of the more tender moments. I think it might be the most tender moment that we have seen Midnight in the spotlight, and she's not making some sort of, like innuendo or being like over the top, that she just seemed more like a normal person, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. My favorite moment I just simply had Mirko on there because obviously she's the star of this episode
See,
with
I
seeing what
left
she
her
can
for the
do.
next episode. My MVP for the episode for sure is Mirko, but and that's because of she managed to basically accidentally talk about plot armor. She managed to accidentally destroy a key piece for the Paranormal Liberation Army, just kicking down a door, and just happened to be taking, and that door just happened to take out one of the most crucial pieces. I know she would have gotten it even without, like, she would have gotten the little Momu, but how that played out was a little too convenient,
Right.
in my
No.
personal opinion.
Yeah, so I just had her for my favorite moments of the episode, finally seeing her in action again. MVP wise, I did also have her down, and I also had Midnight down, and I also had Eraser because Midnight and Eraser, who there's another person I'm going to throw in at the end. One of them, one, if not two of them, are going to die. I've been saying that
I think I
since.
since watching this episode, and then the moment, because again, getting ahead, but Midnight also has a moment with another student in episode 2. I'm like, yeah, I'm jumping on that bandwagon for sure. Midnight's dying.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
because Midnight, like, that's the longest dialogue she's had in a bit, and then also with the Eraser having his dialogue, that was a longer dialogue. He really doesn't talk all that much, especially to other like people who aren't his students, because he was
Mm-hmm.
very like for him and his demeanor, he was very passionate.
Mm-hmm. Well, he
So
was
those,
angry. Like,
yeah, he was
talk
angry.
about the faces of revenge, Eraser and Present Mike. Like, damn.
So those were my three MVPs for this episode. Did you have any other MVPs outside of them?
No, I honestly basically have, I didn't write Eraser for every like MVP, but basically Eraser is an MVP for every episode so far. Like, Eraser, I will go ahead and call it Eraser, Hawks, Mirko, so far are just going to be war MVPs in general, because like none of this would go through without them. And I know there's going to be more coming up. And obviously, again, Endeavor's the number one hero. So, of course, he's going to be considered an MVP of the war. Like, he's going to be a war hero. But I feel like so far, those three have already cemented their status in these 4 episodes as being for sure. Like, for sure.
I would say the first. I mean, I would agree with like the first quarter. Since yeah, quarter yeah. So I would say like the first four. I 100% agree. We'll see. Well, if they're all standing in the next four,
Well, even if they're not standing in the next 4, unfortunately, their impact on the war, I feel like for sure it puts them up there.
we'll see. We'll have to wait and see, especially after the end of the fourth episode. Did you have any questions about the first episode? Any questions that came in your mind?
So I didn't have, I mean, I was, the question that I had come up was something that had already been hinted, that Hawks had like specialized training, that he was like trained to be a hero in something separate. And he kind of briefly touches on it. Of course, we know it's through the commission, but like for me, it was like, okay, what's the program? How many people are in it? Are they recruited for it? Are they, I got dark and I'm like, are they bioengineered for it? Like, how like what more is there in there? Because there's obviously more in there. But I did feel like a question was answered for us during this episode about Dr. Egghead, is like, as I think of him, what is his name? Garaki or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. When we figure out that he does have a quirk, and it's like, that makes, yep, that makes sense. That makes sense why the Nomus have the quirks that they do, why All for One was able to survive for so long. Like, yeah, and why the doctor's been around for so long, even. part of me wanted to like speculate that that's the quirk. Like if you buy into the whole that he stole a quirk from Midoriya, that was the quirk he stole from Midoriya, but I don't think so because I get the feeling that he had that quirk long before he met Midoriya.
It's funny too because with him, I didn't even write his quirk thing until this past episode because the biggest thing I took away from him on that very like first episode was his image in the public eye, renowned
Mm-hmm.
doctor, like all of his normal workers revere him like a normal
They
thing.
stepped in front of President Mike to protect
Mm-hmm.
him. Like, hey, like don't hit him, don't use violence or whatever the translation was. It was like, what? Like we obviously know as the viewers like what's going on, but still like you got to be pretty bold to get between a hero and somebody they're like roughing up because the assumption is that the hero should be in the right and the person they're roughing up did something wrong
Yeah.
or is a villain. So that was
So,
interesting.
so that was my thing with him. But I had a whole, actually, had a whole list of questions from this first episode. Like my first question was, so who finally told him about the army? I feel like that meeting should have been shown like in season 4. I wanted to see the heroes' reactions, knowing that some of their co-workers have been working underneath their noses this entire
Oh,
time to
right.
overthrow them. So those questions were super big. And then from which we talked about with Eraser and the people, everyone fighting, I was like, so okay, who's watching? I'm gonna go ahead and say who's watching the strongest in terms of power and quirk. Who's watching Aerie right now?
Right.
If she goes crazy, and
Right.
then like general questions: are the UA classes canceled because everyone's fighting? But is everyone fighting at UA? Like, where's the principal at?
That's
And
true. We haven't seen Principal Nezu. That's fair.
then the biggest thing to go on to my other theory when we did the
Where are the other
preview.
classes too? We've only seen class 1A, class 1B, and one person from
Mm-hmm.
uh what is it? The
General
senior class.
studies
We
of senior
yeah,
class, yeah, the big
yeah.
three. So those are some of my questions. My last one was to go to my other theory. The closing song shows Deku running away from his classmates, running past them and leaving the scarf. Does that signify my other thing that he's leaving after this arc?
Yeah. Yeah. And the scarf, like, I just feel is a big tell for like a divergence in where he's been so far, but also it's a very reminiscent symbol of a particular villain that a lot of people felt like wasn't necessarily wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I and then obviously he gets brought up later on in episode 4, but we'll get there.
Yep. So episode 2 was Mirko, the number 5 hero. Andrew, what's going on, the key stuff in this episode?
Mirko's going the fuck off. That's what's going on in this episode. So she basically made it past a shit ton of high level Nomus by herself, turning herself basically into a Beyblade, like the way it was animated. That was my first thought. It was like, oh, that's she's a Beyblade. She's a spinning top right there. Amazing. Crashes the laboratory, finds the real doctor, and of course he's shitting his pants. Like that's my other thing about him is like you are so fucking pathetic. Like you are just oh my god, he irritates me. He really does. But so she's going off. He lets loose some even higher level nomus in the sense that they have critical thinking skills and they have like a higher activation point where they have I guess maybe stronger quirks or better control over the quirks. I'm not sure exactly what it comes to the quirks, if that's an impact or if it's just the critical thinking piece. And she's holding her own completely by herself when Endeavor, with a normal high level Nomu, was struggling and almost died. She took on, how many was she fighting? 4?
Yeah, she fought a good
Fighting
amount.
4. And like, not only managed to stay alive, she like, oh my gosh, she was kicking such ass. It was amazing. And then when she got hurt and didn't even flinch, it was amazing. It was amazing. She, for sure, MVP of the episode. That's why this episode's named after her. She deserves all of the credit. Um, the other piece, the second half of the episode, is going back to Team Edge Shot, who is trying to raid the Paranormal Liberation Army's hideout during like a scheduled meeting. So that's where, so the two Class 1A students in that like spear position in the front line with their wide range attacks are Tokoyami and Denki. And then we also have the Class 1B, we have Miss Mushroom. And I keep forgetting his name, but the guy that's able to like make the floor turn into mud. Like,
Oh, the teacher.
no. That's the Mentos. That's concrete. The student, the one that can like make the floor, the ground like soft and melt and then make it hard again, and so you're trapped.
Gotcha.
That guy, was it a sludge man? I can't remember his name. I can't, but he was trouble when it came to the Class 1A versus Class 1B trainings.
Mm-hmm.
So they're making their move. And I feel like also, again, Eraser for me is basically an MVP in every single episode because he's erasing the regenerative abilities of the Nomus so that way they can be killed and minimize the loss or defeat of other heroes in the process. But last second, Mr. Denki Kaminari came in super clutch. Super clutch. Like that was, I know it's Mirko's episode 100%, but I feel like he is also should be named as an MVP.
What was your favorite moment of the episode?
So I already said a couple of the ones that I really, Mirko not flinching when her arm got spliced, essentially.
Yeah, her arm's done.
That was insane. Insane. The funniest moment of the episode is Endeavor like giving Eraserhead a compliment about his quirk. Like, that's a nifty quirk. Like, you can still come be my sidekick. Like, and Eraser's like, nah, I got some snot-nosed students to deal with. It's like very Eraserhead fashion. It's one of those things where you're able to like get a little bit of humor and breathe. But and this is again because I'm a big sucker for romantic plot lines. But the ship confirmation was so cute in this episode. I don't know if you want to say who it is. Like, I don't mind not saying who it is, but it was just so cute. Because after Midnight has her moment with Denki kind of helping him, I don't want to say find his courage because he's a hero. So he's always been willing to put himself out there. But being in this like actual battle situation, he was freaking out. So she had another touching moment with him, and the ship was confirmed. The feelings were confirmed. It was so freaking cute. And then he just speeds past most of the people in front of him. I didn't realize he could move like that, number one. Number two, the amount of voltage that he was lightning rodding using his body was insane. And the way they animated it to make him look so in control and like powerful was great. I also thought it was hilarious that the Paranormal Liberation Army's like electricity user essentially needed to pull electricity from somewhere else to use it because he had to basically like taser himself and then would amplify the voltage. Whereas Denki's quirk electrification, this is where it gets, into the differentiation between quirks of like that guy's, yes, it can be applied towards electricity and that's how he chooses to do it, but it amplifies it. He doesn't create it. He couldn't just hold on to people's cell phone chargers between his teeth and charge their phones. Like Denki, like they just function very differently. And that guy thought he was such hot shit. He was like hands in the pockets, walking up real slow, smoking his cigarette, made the little butt of his cigarette like spark up, and he's like basically like hold my beer. And then Denki handles all of that shit, and he's just like, no way. And it's like, fuck off. You are not the only person who can use electricity. Like, what? Like, come on. Like, so that was fucking great. Chef's kiss, fucking great. I didn't have any questions actually from this episode, but what about you?
So just going back, favorite moment was mine was Denki at the end because he's someone who hasn't gotten that type of spotlight in class 1A. Him having confidence, and I mean I'll say it because I wrote him down anyway, with Denki and Jiro
Jiro.
now being
Yeah.
like confirmed, which I mean that was one of the
It was one of the more obvious ones. Like it was just there. Like everybody could kind of
well,
see it.
all of them have been obvious, but this is the first one that's actually been like confirmed, and we're like almost what 100 plus episodes, 3 movies,
Yeah,
season 6. Shit, we don't know what happens. One of them might not make it out.
that's true.
So
That's very
for
true.
it to actually be
In that
confirmed,
moment that he like fully like if he didn't realize it before, like he fully accepted it in that moment.
yeah.
Because
And it's
essentially
both
what Midnight,
ways. It's
yeah,
both ways. This is the first one that it's both ways
yeah,
because with Shoto and Momo, it's all Momo's side. Shoto hasn't acknowledged it. Like Midoriya hasn't acknowledged the stuff with Uraraka. Like it's all they're all one sided. This was the first time where it was
yeah. Because we
reciprocal
could
both
see her
ways.
like mentioning like she was overly worried about Denki, even though Tokoyami was out there. And part of that could be that she feels like Tokoyami's more like battle ready or experienced. But the way it comes across is that she's just more generally worried about Kaminari being able to handle the task he's been given and being able to come back. And so for Midnight to be like, hey, if it's hard for you to picture or like really feel passionate about protecting someone somewhere, picture yourself protecting, the person or the people or the thing most important to you. And he takes that moment to be the thing most important to me or the person most important to me. And then we see Jiro and it's
Yeah.
like, yes. Oh my God. I audibly like yelled when I saw that. I was just like so excited, so happy. But you're right. One of them, or both of them, honestly, this could be a Ramus and Tonks situation from Harry Potter where they both die.
Yeah.
Like
Potential it's
that would be
potential.
terrible, but technically it could happen.
And the only question I had from this episode, because when I do the notes, I do them in live time, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
go back. So obviously, the only thing I wrote again was at this time when this episode came out, it was like midnight again, which we've already talked about having 2 things. That was my one thing. I was like, oh, it's really about to,
It's
yeah,
gonna happen.
she's gonna die. So
If she
that
gets an episode titled after her, she's dead.
potential, yeah, but just because she's never had one before. I mean, Mirko just had one, and then 2 episodes later, she's not looking too good either. And depending
Right.
on what
How you
someone does
interpret.
when he destroying the hospital since he's awake, there's a lot of people there who might not make it to the final fight.
Right. Right.
So next episode was One Justice. It's the third episode, and before we actually talk about this
You
episode,
right.
I was trying to really think, and I was really trying to go back. I don't know if the closest one of recent is when Lemillion lost his quirk and he was still fighting to protect Aerie and all that music and all stuff. No, but this episode is probably one of the most emotional episodes, definitely of recent My Hero Academia anime, and maybe the most emotional one of all time.
Really? You think so?
I think they did this episode
Justice
very perfectly because you were feeling bad for the person who actually
on
spoilers
the chopping block.
dies. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you feel really
Yeah.
bad about it. The person who kills him feels really bad about it. Really doesn't
Yep.
like. So I was just sitting there. I was like, that episode is probably one of the most emotional
Emotionally
ones from
charged
all
for
ones.
sure.
So,
For sure.
but let's get into it. So go ahead, Andrew.
So, I mean, do we want to say who dies? Do we just not want to say that? Because like,
At this point, I mean, episode 3 came out on the 15th. They'll probably hear this by the 6th, 5th, 6th, maybe episode. So we might as well. We can. It's already out.
okay,
So
okay, so like, yeah, so twice, it's twice. And honestly, towards the end of that episode, there, I really thought he was gonna like barely make it out because like that's when Dobby got involved in the face off between Hawks and Twice. And yeah, we see Hawks be very conflicted about it. Hawks likes Twice. He wishes and wanted Twice to like, you know, to have a fresh start. He offered him the fresh start. And I mean, it was just really sad to see. I mean, and see Twice's guilt because he has the flashbacks to when he brought Overhaul to Shigaraki, and then that's when they lost Big Sis Mags, and they took I'm forgetting his name, the guy with the marbles that wears the mask, took his one of his arms, and like that was a whole disaster. And Twice was the one that brought him, and then now Twice is the one is essentially almost the entire reason that Hawks is able to know about the meeting, know where Shigaraki's at, gaining power, and the whole thing, if and hopefully when the Paranormal Liberation Army fails, it's primarily because of Twice's misjudgment. Of course, we're thankful for his misjudgment because we're on the hero side, but we do see that emotional like turmoil and guilt, and he was more than willing to sacrifice himself to get Hawks because Hawks is threatening everyone he holds dear. Particularly, he references Toga, which that goodbye was very touching. I was actually kind of surprised that I didn't cry because this is a very emotionally charged episode and I am a crier. But I think for me, part of the reason that I didn't is because, I mean, once we saw his quirk evolve, that he basically is a one-man army, he had to go. There was no way. And that's even because I liked him as a character. I wish he would have been a good guy or would have been able to start over. And so, yeah.
so this episode is, which I honestly think it's the best episode out of the 4. Obviously
Hmm.
because of the emotional reasons, but there's a lot of things that have never been said in watching of My Hero of season 6. One of the biggest things was Hawks when he was just like, you get to a point if the good person doesn't want to, the hero doesn't want to give up, the villain doesn't give up, you got to kill him. That's the
Right.
first time in
Yeah.
all of My Hero that you've heard a hero say,
I
"You're not
gotta
gonna
kill
give, I'm
you.
gonna kill you." Like
Yeah.
that's and this is
That
season
was in one
6.
of my questions. I was like, okay, so with Hawks killing twice, like, can he be a hero anymore? Like, is this a wartime exception? Is like what happens with this? What happens from here if Hawks makes it out alive? Because this again, this is a war, and he was loyal to the heroes, but now, and of course, any hero is the enemy of the Paranormal Liberation Army, but they were double. Yeah,
Yeah. So
so he might not make it out of this, and that I think goes more into no, that does happen all in episode 3, but like, damn, and the pairing, the matchup, because in the next episode we see Tokoyami kind of reflecting on Hawks as his mentor. In general, goes over how like well-rounded he is, how he's able to do all of these things, and he flat out asked him, like, "Hey, what are you weak against?" And Hawks was like, "Easy, fire." And so, who's he up against with already half burnt off wings?
before we get to that, because
Okay,
that's gonna be some stuff from 3, because that's gonna go right
right.
into 4. So with the killing thing too, and once Hawks came out of like that, because Dobby comes and he's like, "Don't apologize" and all that stuff. But once like Hawks, there's a scene where he comes out of the smoke and like you
Mm-hmm.
see his eyes, but they're like sharpened up. I'm like, oh, he's dead. Like he's actually like I didn't think he was actually really going to kill him. I really didn't. And then I was like, oh, we just had a hero kill somebody. And like you said with the wartime thing, or I mean, it's like what Hawk said. It's like if you get to this point, if you know they're not going to stop and all of that, then they got to go. My thing when I was watching it, because obviously Hawk's reveal, like he
Yeah.
was two timing them and all of that. And just because, like, I do this a little bit, I, like really think deep into my comparison stuff. And that scene to me
Hmm.
is a scene when he was revealing and twice was super sad. In an alternate anime universe, that scene to me is what would have happened if like Itachi actually would have had to kill Kisame. Like if he actually revealed that he
Yeah.
was an agent, that was the
Yes.
closest thing I thought of. I was like, this is because I've always wondered. I was like, so what to the Naruto fans? Well, how was Itachi going to take out the Akatsuki? Like he was going to have to do something. So like him being partnered up with Kisame, and Kisame really liked him. Just
Right.
and like he was sad when Itachi died, just like twice. Really liked a Hawks and vice versa. So like if they said Itachi got to start killing these Akatsuki members and the first one's your partner, that's the scene that reminds me of like that would have been
What
the scene right there, and that would have been just as just as
gut
sad.
wrenching. Yeah.
And then obviously the MVPs of this were Hawks and Twice. Their voice actors and the music
Hmm.
delivered was just crazy. One of the emotionally charged episodes of recent thing. But then the biggest thing, which we have talked about this before on many podcasts of secret identities and all of that.
Right.
Dobby knowing Hawks' real name was one of the biggest shockers.
Right.
That was wild.
That threw Hawks for a loop because Hawks
Mm-hmm.
was like we find out more so why like in the next episode, but he was just floored. And that's the second time Dobby has walked up on a hero and been like,
Your real
bitch,
name.
I know your name. The first time being Endeavor. And with all the speculation around like who Dobby really is, and then now he walks up on Hawks, and Hawks is already very much like, I have to stay focused, I have to stay focused, I have to stay focused. And then Dobby hits them with the hey Kygo, and is like, oh, threw him for a massive loop.
Oh, I was going nuts because I'm like, oh my gosh, what? And like the fact that Hawks was thrown off because I mean, obviously
Exactly.
he can keep a poker face. The dude was
Trained.
yeah and trained in the double agent, but he couldn't keep it during that. I'm like, oh, this is
This is
this is
bad. Like
something.
this is bad. And then I started running the like questions popping in my head is like, oh, was Dobby like originally also in this like super secret like hero training class?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that how he knows his name? Did they like play together as kids? Like, were they neighbors? Like, what? Like, how does he know his name? Like, truly, how does he know his name?
Yeah, with
And
that,
it's
I officially was like, okay, I've been underestimating Dobby way too much. Like this guy knows a
he's been a bit of
lot
a
more.
sleeper.
Yeah, he knows a
Yeah.
lot more than what I thought he did with the Hawks thing. That was big. That's why I was like, this was my favorite episode out of the four. But now
But
that perfectly leads into the fourth episode.
yeah.
They
I
kind
do
of
I do
stumbled.
want to say one question that I had also during episode 3 was
Mm-hmm.
so Tokuyami being involved in the like initial attack was to help seal off the long tunnels. And so he did that using a new move called Ragnarok with Dark Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And Dark Shadow got a glimpse at Gigantomachia, right?
Yep,
The yeah.
the big thing.
And Dark Shadow was like, don't go down there, there's a monster. And that's when we hear is it Sugarichi, the police buddy of All Might, basically like, oh yeah, no, don't worry about that because like he only takes, orders from essentially all 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 for one, but he's like out of commission, so don't worry about it. And I'm like, that's red flag, red flag on that play. Cause like saying that is like I'm looking at him stare at the boombox and I'm just like, oh my god, does he fully take orders from Shigaraki now? Because if that's the case, then that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a massive problem.
He will. That's going to be the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was my question was like, damn, does he really fully like listen to Shigaraki now? Or is it that he's like just kind of accepted him, but he still wants to have like all for one's voice tell him what to do, you know?
Hmm.
But I think that kind of gets answered in the next episode,
Yeah.
which you are about to start.
Yeah. So I mean, right where we left off with Dobby and Hawks, like you said, the one weakness for Hawks is fire, and he's fighting a fire person, which now with like knowing like what Hawks is really about, I would have thought he would have planned for that because
Right.
like I always like I forgot that Twice was the one who really introduced him because I just remember like the end credit scenes of season 5 where it's like
Mm-hmm.
Dobby introducing him to the league. And like I always
Right.
thought him and Dobby hung out a little bit more than him and Twice. So I was didn't think like Hawks. I'm like, all right, man, you've already proven that you're super smart, like tactical. You would think you would have to run into Dobby eventually. So I was just shocked he didn't wasn't like
Right.
more prepared or had like a backup.
Right. And I'm wondering if the backup plan, we just haven't seen it yet. Cause his, again, this is the same episode, like I said, where Tokuyami kind of reflects back on his time
Hmm.
training under Hawks. And Hawks says, like, my weakness is fire. And so Tokuyami's like, okay, well, how do you combat that? How do you, and Hawks is just straight up like, it was such a silly answer to me. I was like, of course he would say it that way. That's so Hawks. But he's basically like, get them first. It's like, well, you did not do that as far as we can tell right now. But maybe he has some other like latent trap. I don't think so, but I don't want to assume against Hawks just because like I feel like he continually surprises us
Yeah.
and not always like in a good way. Like when I read, obviously, because like subtitles, but when I read and heard Dobby say his name, I figured Hawks was not going to be phased,
Hmm.
and then he was, and it's like, oh shit. So yeah, so we'll see if he doesn't actually have a plan in potentially episode 5, or maybe they'll leave it hang for a really long time that we don't know exactly what happens. But the fact that Hawks asks Dobby who he is, and then we see Dobby's mouth move, but there's no audio. Oh my God. Talk about a teaser.
Well, Hawks
Like,
even said too, like he thoroughly investigated everyone in the league, knew their personalities past, all that. The only two people he couldn't get anything were Shigaragi and Dabi. And then he was just like, dude, who the hell? Like, for someone of his caliber, not to be able to find out any information about those two.
right.
And then Hawks, like you said, he's like, who the hell are you? And you get that whisper thing. And then, which I didn't even know Dabi was a big Stain fan like that. You
See,
hear a whole
everybody
one.
forgot. Everybody
Yeah,
forgot.
I
I
did
totally
too.
forgot. But then as soon as he said it, I was like, that's right. Because that's when Jiren brought Toga and Dobby in was after Stain. They were both Stain fans.
I completely forgot like he was that big a fan. Like he's just like, man, I don't really care. I'm just using the league to promote
Carry
Stain's
out
thing,
Stain's will, right. And
which
that's why, like, that's when he said that, I was like, oh fuck, that's right. Because Toga at one point also was like, hey, this doesn't seem like what Mr. Staney would do or would want, whatever. And that's when Shigaraki's like, fuck Stain, whatever. I actually found it kind of hard that Shigaraki never ascribed to that ideology, but they still stuck with him. But whatever. Yeah, I had forgotten too. I completely forgot. Um,
yeah, that
but
was that was
I,
wild.
yes, and I will say, the moment because basically we know Twice is dead,
Hmm.
and Dobby like lights Hawks up. I did find it odd that his first light up is only on his back. He didn't bother to like burn him anywhere else. It's only on his wings. And it's like, okay, is he trying to torture him? Is he going to try to make an example out of him by essentially taking away his quirk, his use of his quirk? Um, but when Hawks looks up at Dobby and Dobby's like, saying like, you killed him, you're not a real hero. Like, I don't know if Dobby uses the word friend, but basically is like, you killed somebody, not necessarily important to me, but you killed somebody and I am upset about it. And Hawks looks at him, and the face that Dobby's making, there are no tears, but it's a very extreme face. And Hawks's comment is that the face of somebody who's upset that their friend just died? And Dobby was just like, you can't say that to me. That's the fact that he said that, like, how mean was kind of like, it was weird, but it reminded me because his next comment was that he burned his tear ducts. So like it's
Mm-hmm.
confirmed that he physically cannot cry. And there was a situation, I don't remember which season it was, where blood was coming out from underneath, like where like it looks like he's got his eyelid stapled on.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's kind of reminiscent of how he now cries because his tear ducts are burned off. But anyway, that reminded me of a parallel in Attack on Titan when, spoiler alert, if you've never seen Attack on Titan, please skip this next like 30 seconds. In one of the later seasons, and in season 4, I forget which part, I'm pretty sure part 1, one of our favorite, most beloved characters gets unexpectedly shot and killed. And everybody's upset about it. Legitimately, every one of the OGs is torn to pieces. And it sounds like the main character, Eren, is crying, is laughing. But in reality, how he processes pain usually comes off as a scream or a yell or like a painful laugh. And I mean, Eren in that scene does get, I think, kicked or punched. I don't remember which and by who, but it's kind of that not everybody expresses said pain in the same way. And so you can't judge how people react to a tragedy or like a sudden happening like that. Um, which is another real life kind of like parallel. Of course, is it strange that somebody would laugh when a friend of theirs dies, or like even if their pain sounds that way, like whatever. But I thought that was the parallel that I thought of in this episode.
No. So then that's basically half the episode. Then you go to them fighting again these nomus, who these high end ones, these are just utterly ridiculous
Yeah.
on how like I'm just really sitting back and thinking that even if I don't know however long the advance they got, like they stand no chance. Like you were gonna fight 10,000 people, you were gonna fight all these different things in Nomus, you're gonna fight Super Shigaraki. I'm
Right.
really still sitting here, even with this jump. I'm like, I still don't know how they're gonna win. Like they have
Right.
the advantage now, but
Right. And
now,
that's the thing is that's set up, I feel like in this episode is that the tide is about to turn.
oh
Because
yeah,
at
it
the end of
is.
this episode is when Shigaraki like comes out of suspended life, which was also plot armor bullshit. But anyway, regardless, we did get lucky in that technically he didn't reach the full 100% activation. So technically he's not as supercharged as he could have been. And that's thanks to Mirko breaking the tank and letting some of the fluid out. Next was President Mike's like scream, frying the rest of it and busting it open. And at the time that it's bust open and Shigaraki comes out, they check him. He has no pulse. So essentially he was in suspended animation. So technically speaking, realistically, he could have just died and never woken up. That would have been beautiful. Of course, would have that have been too easy? Absolutely. We have too many Shigaraki and Deku parallels for them not to face off. Like, of course, they couldn't get so lucky that he'd never wake up. But I didn't think he was going to wake up right away. And I'm very concerned about the hero that they left
Oh, he's
to
dead.
take care. Yeah,
He's dead. He's
he's
dead. He's
gone.
gonna die.
Yeah.
I also think President Mike might be smoked because he's yeah, I think he's gonna die too.
I hope not. I really hope not.
Because
I really,
they're
really,
getting that
really hope not.
professor back. And President Mike's the current person holding him. The doctor, he's dead.
That's fair.
He's either dead or he is going to be
Out of
retired dead.
commission.
Like
Yeah.
he's going to be hurt so bad retired.
Yeah.
Because you talked about the Sugar Rock like Miracle was. I was like, oh, like to be at this second part. I didn't think Miracle was going to be making it out either because I was like, oh,
Me,
this is
yeah.
not looking. I don't think she's fighting the rest of the,
No, for sure.
which is
Even
bad because
with
it's only episode 4 out of 25.
right.
So, and if you don't have your number 5 hero when the main fights haven't even started yet, that's going to be bad. But President Mike, we got to see him do stuff like you said. Like, again, anyone who we haven't seen do stuff often, I instantly think they're going to be gone. It's their swan song.
That's fair. I will say one of my highlights on a much lighter note for this episode was Fat Gum,
The
his
taxi.
fat taxi with all the students just chilling in his belly, and he's running them back to the back to the back line. It was, and to even give it an official name of Fat Taxi, I was like, oh my goodness, that's so cute. Like that's so funny.
So with this one too, obviously you brought up the Shigaraki plot points where you see him like in his subconscious, I'll just say subconscious, and you see like his family,
Mm-hmm.
like really doesn't have that many hard feelings for his sister, still likes the mom, hates the dad,
Mm-hmm.
and then like obviously all for one's telling him to come here. And then like you see his family trying to stop. I don't know why they put the dad in front. That was stupid.
That
They
was
should
really stupid.
they should have put his
And
sister, his mom, or his grandma, who All Might's master. We got to
right.
see her. Haven't seen her in like a
Yeah.
physical form in forever. So,
Yeah.
but and then you
And
hear the
the
doctor
I mean
talking.
foreshadowing of the what's that called? The intro. I mean, we see Shigaraki wearing his grandma's cape. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's his grandma's cape. And I'm like, oh fuck, that's messed up.
Well, I
Like
want to know where he got. Like,
me
I would just
too.
because that's see. This goes back to my thing I've said for years in regards to My Hero. I don't understand how Shigaraki, if he loved the season one, he
Mm-hmm.
hated All Might because his grandmommy died because of this dude, quote unquote. But your master is the one who killed your
Killed her.
grandma. And it has not been shown that you know that your master is the one who killed your grandma. So if your master just casually showed up like, I was able to salvage your grandma's cape that you admire so much, wouldn't you ask where he got it from? Oh, when he was snapping her freaking neck. Like that.
Probably.
I still don't, but whatever. It was their thing. He walks to all for one. I think the biggest thing too was the doctor talking about the quirk singularity theory. I was like, oh, we're
Yeah.
bringing this back. Like I was like,
Yeah. And the
holy
fact it's
shit.
him, like that he's the one that brought it up. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
he like when All for One came up to him and was like, hey, I don't think your stuff is bullshit. And he just dedicated the rest of his like
I
super
kind of don't
extended life
either.
to him.
So
And he's like, oh my God. He's a little bitch. I don't like, oh my God.
I don't think his stuff is either. I know he did the thing with the quirk stealing bullets and all that for
Mm-hmm.
necessary, but I don't think his stuff's that bullshit either. But and obviously we talked about the first episode, like of course the guy who's so bad, the doctor having a quirk that everyone would die for. Like life
Would kill
force, you get to,
for.
yeah, you get to live twice as long, you just lose athletic ability. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Like,
And then obviously like all this planning and stuff. And because I'm starting to think, man, I'm trying to think the doctor and all for one were freaking Black Zetsuing it. Like they orchestrated Shigaragi's family to get the way they died and all that because they knew he would come to him because they were talking about a successor. And you just don't pick anyone. Like I feel like that shit was all pre.
pre-planned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I mean, the end up. I mean, Shigaragi's waking up, and then we'll go. That goes into episode 5, which is called "The Thrill of Destruction," October 29th, and it's gonna get bad
It's gonna go wild. It's gonna get
because
fucking wild.
he got a power up when he obviously was fighting Redestro, and
Mm-hmm.
now he's going to be let's just 75% times or whatever stronger than what he was then. And if he has all this shit that they were talking about, that from All for One and all that
Right. That
stuff,
now he has the original All for One quirk,
yeah,
which is
that's
why I feel like since he now has the original All for One quirk, Gigantomachia will for sure will
mm-hmm.
not take orders from All for One anymore. He will take them from Shigaraki directly.
Which is that's why I feel like this is so premeditated because like someone as smart and dangerous and cunning as All for One making all of these plans and then giving Shigaragi the original quirk, you obviously you think he's going to be completely loyal to your ideas and stuff, but it
Right.
could be the typical villain. I'm stronger than you now, yada yada. I don't have to listen to you.
Oh, like
I
pull a
feel like there's a
Sasuke with
plan.
Orochimaru.
Yeah. I feel like he wouldn't do that unless he knew something like that would happen and there's a whole plan.
Yeah.
Speaking of plan, there was another question since everyone is magically out here fighting and all that. What security team was left to watch All for One?
I was thinking about that too. I was like, how is Tartarus doing? Like,
I feel like he's going to break out like episode 12.
probably.
That'd be bad. That'd be.
It'd be terrible. But it's gonna happen. You know it's gonna happen.
And then, and also a big point where from a strategic thing now, I'm conflicted in this episode because
Mm-hmm.
obviously the doctor, like you talked about Eraser being an MVP, started talking about like Eraser stuff was being brought up. And obviously the Nomus were talking about like we can't do stuff because of Eraser's quirk.
Right.
I'm getting nervous that what if they capture Eraser and his quirk gets like
In the wrong
transferred into
hands.
All for One?
Right.
I truly do not know without dropping the atomic nuke how you would beat an All for One with all those quirks and the ability to erase your quirk. That's why I was sitting there. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to erase her because if he gets kidnapped and they take his shit, that's bad.
Right. And I feel like they would have to, what I mean, my thought is like, okay, Eraser's probably aware of this and everybody else is, and he's probably got like a cyanide pill on one of his teeth. Number one. Number two, there has to be a secondary something to just incinerate his body because obviously him being dead does not prevent that doctor
Mm-hmm.
from extracting the quirk. Like
Yeah, he's
he
too
needs
good.
to
He's too good a
be
doctor.
gone.
Yeah.
His nothing can remain. So
Is that the way he goes out in this season? He's like, I'd rather die than let my quirk like hurt my students.
fuck. That would be, oh my
That's
God.
super eraser. That's on
That is,
cue.
that is super eraser. I feel like, oh my God. I hope that isn't it. I really hope that isn't it. But as we're watching the episodes, because Eraser, like I said, basically I've jotted down as an MVP for every single motherfucking episode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I probably shouldn't swear so much. Anyway,
It's okay. I
um,
mean, you swear a certain amount of numbers, we just put numbers times, we just put the explicit things, so it's okay.
okay. Well, my bad, guys. Anyway, um, because he is so central to like Team Endeavor, I'm starting to get very nervous. He's going to be, if he's not killed, incapacitated very, 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 very soon. And he is so central. Like they need him. And I also am just like, how rare is this type of quirk that they can't find anyone else for him as a backup? And this is
Ooh,
when I wish that the heroes also had access to like the duplication stuff. So like they could duplicate his quirk and like with his permission, like give it to somebody else. Like,
just think about it from this end too, from another Naruto comparison. When Kabuto stole Yamato to you because he's the only person with the first Hokage's
right?
things to do this. What if they steal him and they power up these high-end sets Nomus
No
with
moves.
a racer quirk? They would be I'm telling you, anyone
They would be
else who
unstoppable because they'd be able
anyone
to
who
erase
gets it's gonna
everybody's
be
quirk and
unstoppable.
they're still regenerating. And
Mm-hmm.
they would be completely invincible. And that's why I feel like that won't happen because they can't be completely invincible.
Well, they can be
Um,
invincible all to just one person. I mean, one for all is not going to get a rate. That'd be it'd be invincible just to not the main character. But I don't think Midoriya can. I actually don't know what the hell he's can do now. I don't know what any of these kids are going to be able to do when these
I
high ends get to the field.
I facts. My question is like again with the face off between Deku and Shigaraki, I feel like there's gonna be Talk no Jutsu attempts. And part of me is like that it's not working here. But I also wonder because of that matchup, because of that history, and because of, all for one and one for all derived from all for one, if during that fight, like kind of the way that Naruto and or not Naruto, excuse me, no, yeah, when Naruto and Sasuke were fighting, that they kind of had like Sasuke had a glimpse into Naruto's life and had an epiphany. I wonder if there's going to be some situation like that where Shigaraki sees his grandmother in during that fight in Midoriya, or like she comes out something, and he finally like the talk no jutsu finally fucking works. I feel like that's the only thing that makes sense to me
I have a
for it to come to a
complete
close.
opposite.
But
I have a complete
really,
opposite.
okay.
Yep. Complete opposite. Because now I'm gonna go back to the OG anime of this. I think it's gonna be a Gohan Cell moment.
Mm,
I think Shigaraki is going to kill a racer or one of these people right in front of Midoriya, and it
mm-hmm.
is going to snap. Like all like it's going to be the first time he's like, I gotta kill him, and then like because especially if it's a racer, he's gonna want to kill him. Like I think if it's any of those people that he messes with, he's gonna kill him, and then like all the quirks are gonna like start activating inside of him because only Black
Mm-hmm.
Whip's activated. Midoriya is gonna be due for another power up to match Shigaraki, and that's gonna be
Yeah.
the snap. And like he's just gonna be like, I don't care. We're gonna
We
have
breaking
to,
necks. We breaking
yeah.
necks out here.
Or you could, I mean, it depends on how badly they want to win. Because if they're talking about the overhaul thing, they can be like, well, we do have the secret weapon. If Ares on Midoriya, he can go 100%. Like
Yeah,
they're
but they're not
like
gonna let a child go on into a battle zone.
technically they're anyone under 18 is a child and they're
That
fighting.
that's valid, but you know what I meant. That she's like an elementary school age child without a provisional license and without any sort of combat training.
Well, if it doesn't mean the end of the world, we're killing people now, so everything, all conventional stuff is off.
That's true.
Like if it means the end of the planet, then because I do think Aerie is actually going to have a say in this season, one way or the
Really?
other.
I
Mhm.
figured she was just gonna stay at school.
She's
And I
doing
figured,
something because my biggest thing is out of these 4 episodes, we haven't even seen a glimpse of what the hell is All Might doing.
yeah, seriously.
He's not even in the police thing. So I'm sitting there, I was like, is there a secret plan? Like, is he watching something? Like, he hasn't even given, like, obviously in the third movie, almost a similar type opening. They're having a meeting, all that stuff. Like, oh, there's nukes. All Might's giving that rah rah speech to everyone. We haven't had a rah rah speech from him. And I'm wondering where he's at. Maybe he's the one who's watching Aerie because someone has to, because she's a ticking, like, time bomb.
Yeah.
And obviously the one person who could calm her, that's how I know everything is off. Because a racer wouldn't be fighting this because he's the only one who could calm Aerie down, and he's on the front lines knowing like if we there's not gonna be a Aerie to calm down if we don't win. So that's why I was like, oh, all bets are off. But now Deku's gonna snap because
Yeah.
he hasn't had it yet where he sees someone die right in front of him. Like, it's gonna happen. It's it's gonna be someone he likes, and then he's gonna snap, and then he's gonna be like, I gotta kill Shigaragi now. Hence why I think of the leaving thing, because he's like, I have to reevaluate because now it's like I'm supposed to be a hero. I let someone die just because I don't. Obviously, Shigaragi's not gonna die this season. He's gonna get away somehow, and that was my fault. I need to leave, and I. The only way I could be a hero and fulfill what All Might said because he said you're next, and
Mm-hmm.
that's getting rid of all for one, once and for all, by any means, which means I
Mm-hmm.
have to kill him, which means it goes against all the things I thought of. Because I mean, All Might was trying to kill all for one, so it's not like so. That's what I think is gonna happen. I think they're gonna get past talking. Maybe My Hero Academia season 9 when it's the series finale if they're still going, but he's gonna have to kill him
Yeah.
because he can't let him be that strong. If he starts killing all these other people, like Shigaragi is going to kill people in this next episode, and
Yep. I mean the title of the next episode is what? Just
the thrill of
destruction or
destruction.
yeah. Yeah. And Garaki literally like when he was waking up or like mentioning that his quirk had bloomed after
Mm-hmm.
fighting Gigantomachia and Redestro whatever was like you are now the like actual embodiment of destruction. It was like yikes. And I mean the doctor as much as he's a hmm little bitch
It reminds me of the
he
Doctor from Captain America.
Yes.
That little was working with the Red Skull. That's who he reminds me
Yes.
of, besides
Yes.
Egghead.
100%. Oh my God. Yes. The little freaking snake. But anyway, he said it right that Shigaraki, like, he can now just destroy, make something no longer exist,
Hmm.
ashes to ashes, dust to dust in an instant. If he's touching something that they are touching,
Yep.
he is always touching the ground. So
Hmm.
within a certain radius, and they'll have to figure that out by trial and error, how far away people need to be from him. And at that point, and that's where I feel like his grandmother's quirk is gonna come and kick in, is that, I mean, because her quirk was it float or
Yeah,
flight?
basically
Um,
flying. Yeah.
so obviously if Midoriya is not touching the ground or anything around Shigaraki, then he can, yeah. And he would have to use Air Force because technically if he kicks Shigaraki, then he is touching him. And Deku could probably just disintegrate from there.
We're gonna see. He's gonna get some sort of plot main character power up. It's just, is it gonna be enough?
And will it not just be the power of friendship?
Nah, I don't. I think not a war. I mean, nah, I mean, no.
This is a war, man. There ain't no time for stupid
Someone,
questions.
someone's gonna. There's gonna be afterthoughts. But Andrea, anything else on these first four?
Wow. Just like, oh, wow. It's been good to have them, new episodes every week. It's exciting to see what happens next, just like any anime ever, but like because we are in the middle of a war, and I will admit during Shippuden, during the war, the fourth Great Shinobi War, I basically watched that in sections. So I was not going week by week by week. So that level of anticipation or like anxiety wasn't there. So like this is probably my first proper war arc in that every week. If we didn't have y'all, if I didn't have this podcast and talk about my hero on a regular basis, I probably would wait until like halfway through the season to binge watch the first half and then wait until the very end, or maybe wait until the whole season came out and binge it all at once because like whew, that anxiety's been tough.
I hear
But
you.
I do it for y'all, and I do it because I enjoy speaking about it. But it's so far, it's amazing, but I am waiting for that shoe to drop because we are at one death so far
Yep.
in this war.
And it was a death we did not anticipate.
No, because I didn't. Okay, I figured. I knew Twice needed to be put down. He is a one man army. He needed down. I just did not think they'd be able to take him out before he had an impact,
I
which
didn't
is
think they'd
great.
kill him.
Which is
I thought
great.
your guy was going to do it. I thought they were just going to freeze him.
Hmm?
I didn't think they were going to kill him. I agree with you. I just never thought I would actually see a hero kill someone in this show. That wasn't All for One.
Right. That's true. That's
They
fair.
didn't even kill Overhaul. They didn't like. He just got his arms chopped off. All for One. It's been a
But
mass
that wasn't even
murderer.
the hero's doing. That was Shigaraki was like, nah, bitch, you can't be taking away people's quirks and using your own. Like, nah, I'm taking that. And so
All
he
for One is a
disintegrated his arm.
mass murderer for centuries, and he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why I'm like, okay, if they're not killing him, then they're not going to kill anyone. But like a person we didn't like, obviously need it to be dealt with, but to actually and to see
Kill
Hawks
him.
be the one who did it, like through
Yeah.
the chest, that's couldn't have expected that, which is making me think like, oh, there's going to be some other.
Yeah. And part of the reason I brought that up is it is a death. It is the first death of the war. And while he is like, he was a sentimental favorite, like a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
really identified with him, even though he was a villain. He got offed quick. The bodies are going to start dropping on the hero side too. Like it's been too much in the hero's favor so far, these four episodes. Like, yes, heroes are taking some damage, taking a couple L's here and there, like minor stuff, getting scrapes, burns, all of that stuff. I mean, Mirko is not looking in the best shape, and oh, I hope she makes it so badly. But regardless, um, like I just know that other shoe is about to drop so hard, so hard. If not, if not this episode fully, in episode 6, like in the coming episode 5. If it doesn't fully happen in episode 5, it's coming in episode 6.
You know,
That there's the total tide reversal.
the thing is too that like that theoretically, if this wasn't a shonen and somehow they're going to win, but it's not
Right.
going to be without cost. But just look, I mean, the Liberation Army is stronger than them. They could just win on attrition, like like they just have to outlast them and they'll lose.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to and like the heroes are the ones. You're right. Like they've had a death and like they've had some small stuff, but any small stuff impacts the heroes more than the villains because with the heroes still bombarding, there's still thousands of people in that basement,
Mm-hmm.
like just ready like to explode. So that's why I'm just like they gotta knock these people out. And obviously, and when they're taking out the mansion, besides Dobby, the other big villains of the league haven't shown up yet. Toga's
No.
going to go on a omega killing spree.
Oh yeah.
So now the thing is, now she's going to be more motivated because I know we talked about her and Uraraka having a face off, but now Toga's going to be more motivated because her guy she actually like was friends with is dead because of
Mm-hmm.
this. So kind of nervous for Uraraka when that fight happens.
Oh yeah.
I know she won't die because she's the main heroine and fate will have her and Midoriya together in the end. But psychologically and physically,
It's
there's
gonna be rough.
yeah. So anything else?
No, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast and have been enjoying these 4 episodes. If you haven't seen them yet, hope you watch them soon. And I hope you continue to listen to this series with us because we enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. Okay, Andrea said, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you like, rate, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to. My Hero Academia's episode 5 comes out October 29th. If you're watching it in English, they are always 2 episodes behind.
2 episodes behind, yes.
Yeah. So you can catch up in English while you're listening to this if you want to, if you don't want to do it subs, but they are coming out sub weekly. So enjoy it. And with that being said, this is the L7C podcast signing out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.